We're ready to start, Jay. I think you're still the chair, so.
Okay, I call this meeting of the Isla Vista Community Service District Policy Committee to order at 4:02 p.m. Announce that the meeting is being recorded. Roll call, Director Flaherty.
Here.
Director Aguilar.
Here.
Director Freeman, here. We'll now go into a land acknowledgement. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anascoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Moving on to the public comment period. At this time, any member of the public may speak on matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Finance Committee that are not on the agenda. The committee will not take action on any item not on the agenda except as provided by law. Jonathan, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments.
Moving on to item 3, discussion and action items. Sub item 1, review proposed compensation and employee performance review policies. The committee will review the 2022 IVCSD salary survey results and proposed employee performance review and compensation policies prepared by management partners and give directions to staff. Jonathan.
All right, sounds good. So let me just give you a quick recap of what happened yesterday at Finance Committee, since it kind of feeds into this, and then which is the salary study, and then you guys will really focus more on the policies, but they flow together, and the Finance Committee also heard what these policies are going to be too. So here's a salary study that was done. It was done by management partners. We picked 17 agencies a year ago when we did our last salary study, when we had to set our retirement and our health benefits and we did a salary study only for the GM and AGM positions. So we didn't have all these other jobs yet back then, or even thought of them necessarily yet in the way they are now. So we had 17 other government agencies that we picked. And we had picked them for lots of different reasons. Like no one comparison was like the full comparison. Like some were just nearby in the area, some were the same budget size as us, some were in a coastal zone in another area with a housing shortage and coastal area kind of thing. So we had all these different kinds of reasons to pick different agencies. We had 17, but management partners decided to use 10 of them, the ones that they felt they could find the most data from. So yeah, we these are the positions we looked at. Here's the list of the ones, and obviously like things like City of Goleta, we're never going to match them, but it's just good to know, like, here's what the biggest amount is right next door compared to IVRPD, where actually almost the same budget, same borders, same same pool of applicants we probably can draw from. So obviously they're the most similar to us. So the general manager position, this is a policy related issue too, and we're gonna have to go back and forth on this and also with the board. But one big change they're saying with the GM is that there shouldn't be a range, and that there should be a new process of we have a contract. We've never really followed the contract process that we have with me. And so they're saying we should focus on following that contract process. And they put a blurb in the new policies about following that process. And they're going to write a new memo for us to kind of help explain, like, the policy just says what's the policy. And then they're going to write a memo that kind of explains why. And just help us, here's how you can implement it. But they're saying there should be no range, and the salary should just be a negotiated thing between the board and the GM, which is what everyone else does. That's why no one else has a range here. They all just set the salary as a negotiation as part of the annual review with the GM, or 5 years, whatever we decide the contract would be. But they're like, follow the contract. Like, IVRPD, I think, does a 5-year contract, or they used to at least. So that's what the GM deal is. So what we talked about at Finance Committee, and it's relevant to you guys too, is like we're gonna do on the next board meeting, we're gonna have like an ad hoc committee maybe formed to look at the GM contract and follow through on the process that's being recommended over the summer. So there's that. AGM, we're not going to keep this position, so we can skip it. Community engagement director, this is where I didn't mention this, like one thing, management partners didn't make any recommendations. They just gave us this information. Like it's just and that we did make new ranges in finance committee. So we'll get to that next. So here's just where we're at. With community engagement, it's a hard thing to compare us to. So they didn't even use the other ones on the list because very few groups have community engagement roles, and even like a director level position is sometimes not seen. So they showed us other positions, which I guess when you think about it, these are technically supposed to be maybe lower level positions in the organization than what our person is meant to be, but similar job descriptions. But ours might have some more, more responsibility. So there's that. Then the program managers, we're on salary, or we're on hourly, and others are a lot on salary, but they did do the calculation. Like they broke it out each way. So like for us, they converted us to salary and other way around. Yeah, so we're clearly way lower on this one for the hourly employees. We're in the 20s. Everyone else is minimum 30. So, and it's the same for community spaces and compost collective. We ended up just using like these kinds of positions, or they ended up using these kinds of positions like rec supervisor or coordinator, because that's what they saw were like the matching job descriptions and all that. We have pretty unique titles. Like our titles are very like, branded, I guess. We don't use like these like more standard titles. So they did have to do a little bit of like, matching roles kind of in a more general sense of the jobs. All right. And so that's that. This is the same data for the compost and the community space. And then the next one is kind of interesting, is the intern one. And, we're obviously like with the interns, it's kind of different because it's not a full-time long-term position. So Goleta is actually a good comparison point because, any student can just go right there to get an internship. They're just looking for the experience and put, something to learn more about and put on their resume than like a long-term job. And so we thought that Goleta had a nice model of we have never done this yet, but starting to have like classifications of like entry level, short-term intern. Like if someone just wants to do like a 3-month project with us, then an intern 2 would be kind of hiring an intern who's going to stay on for maybe a year or two, and have them like get experience and stay on. And that was a goal. I mean, that's the finance committee said that should be a goal, is to try to keep interns longer through like this other level. And then intern 3 would be like a grad student or someone who's higher level, who's doing, again, a shorter term intern project with us. So yeah, finance committee liked that City of Goleta model, but felt that 15 is too low and would want to go higher than 15 to make, because we set 15 in 2017 when 15 was way higher than everyone else. And so that's not the case anymore. So they're looking at changing that, but they like the tiers. So having different tiers for different levels of these hourly workers, and same with the dirt riders, kind of looking at doing the same with, a dirt rider who's joins as a first year student, maybe they stick with us for 4 years. We want to attract them to do that and keep them on, and they'd be more experienced and more efficient. So that's the study. And then so the finance committee really just said, let's throw some numbers up and see what can be afforded, and we'll pick some numbers based on what we saw. And if it's totally out of whack with our budget, we'll lower them. If it looks right, we'll, keep working on them. So the goal is not to set these new salaries now or this next meeting. We're gonna try to decide them like in July meeting or the first August meeting. But what we kind of said was 94,000 for the community engagement, 64,000 for the program managers, and then we put 16 for the intern entry, 1650 for the level 2 intern, and 20 for the level 3 intern. And then we'll go over the policies now. This is where we get more into the policy section, but this is the salary, the starting salary, 3 opportunities for a raise, like over 3 years to give incentive to stay and be retained. And then after that, they would get a one-time bonus. So this was the whole, let's not add ongoing costs more than we can absorb to our infinite ongoing costs, for example, to our budget. So the idea was to do one-time bonuses, which are one time, and they don't have to be this amount either if we can't afford them for whatever reason. But once someone's maxed out, here's what they would, qualify to get once a year as their performance. So does anyone have any questions on this, on what finance? I know that some of this is going to be really actually about the policies, like the steps and the bonus. We can save those for once we get into that, but kind of on the numbers and everything that finance committee picked. Any questions?
What was the reasoning behind the $15 an hour on the dirt rider compost pile manager job?
We put 16 now, but it was 15.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see. New start range. Got it.
Yeah. Well, we had the concern though with that, and that is something to still discuss is, UCSB's minimum wage or maximum wage, I guess, is $15 an hour. It is a maximum wage actually for students, is what we've been told, is they pay their students, like workers, $15 an hour. And there's some issue with competition with the edible campus program roles. A lot of them are similar to our compost collective roles, and so there was that concern before, and we talked about it at the finance committee too, but they felt we should try to move to 16 for that too. We shouldn't have a disparity within our own organization on these institutions.
My understanding, for what it's worth, is that as long as we are continuing to pay Editable Campus through the church as opposed to through UCSB, that they actually have a little bit of flexibility, just a little bit of wiggle room on that.
Oh yeah, no, there's that, but I think the one we were trying to be sensitive to not be undercut, not overcutting them, we're gonna.
Right, no, but I'm actually kind of saying that you actually can poke them slightly by doing the 16 here. If you bring it up to 20, you actually, I'm kind of under the impression that you screw them. But if you do it at 16, we have enough flexibility. Well, they have enough flexibility.
Do you guys have a key to close up?
Yes, I do.
Close up? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna leave.
That's great.
Hi, Shirley. Thank you.
If you do it just a little bit at 16, they actually, because we're not paying through the university, they actually aren't subject to that wage cap.
Okay. That makes sense, I guess. Yeah. And then we wouldn't be competing too hard, and we really only have a few positions compared to them. So, So we were we should keep the equity, pay equity within our own organization, probably add the steps to that, which we didn't do yet. So that's where we were at. Any other questions on these numbers?
I have a higher level structural question, which is not necessarily directly on the numbers. Arguably, it's moving into the policy, but it's most of the numbers on the screen are related to the question. I know we've talked in the past about whether to do merit-based, performance raises, and in previous discussions, there had been some people, including Bob, I believe, from his experience working at the county, doing it, and all of my complaints about the tech industry, where everyone is just constantly chasing their performance upgrade figures as opposed to actually doing anything, about whether or not that's like a sane way of doing things. Maybe we could just pay people what the maximum that we assign for that range is, and just not worry about all this complexity of the performance boosts. But
Yeah, so I have a couple answers to that. We can just start talking about this then. It's the main feature of the policy, and maybe we can talk about that and then go on to other parts of it.
I guess
So
if we are done with the numbers,
yeah,
we should verify if anyone else has any questions on the numbers, and then if we are done with them, maybe you can stop screen sharing it.
yeah, yeah. Are we? I guess are we done, Captain Marcos? We're good. Yeah. So it is called merit. So yes, I'll just go through the policy and then we'll focus maybe first on this merit increase thing because it is maybe the biggest point to discuss.
Would you mind zooming that in?
Yes, for sure. Okay. So first section is just procedural stuff. We have some of this already in our employment policies, like that people are at will and may be terminated anytime. So that's currently where we're at. This is the section that's, about the general manager and how that position is treated differently than the regular employment positions, which are none of them are on contract. Only the general manager is, and that's how most public agencies are set up. Is everyone's an employee in that way, and then where the general manager is on a contract. Not that I'm a contractor, I'm still an employee, but yeah, it's just a different setup. This is just an updated equal employment opportunity statement than what we had already. So it's mostly the same. I think they added the gender, including pregnancy, childbirth, and medical conditions to what we already had. Okay, so first section is about entry-level salaries and people who are new. It pretty much says people who are being hired who don't have direct experience should be hired at the beginning of their salary range. So like 64,000, let's say, for the program manager job. And we'll keep. Here's the thing: we are going to need to do annual performance evaluations, but we're not only going to do annual performance evaluations. Performance evaluations should happen like every few months or every week when we talk. Like, hey, improve this. You're doing a good job on this. Like it should be like a regular thing. But everyone should be entitled to at least one. Like we did want to say, like you are entitled to that, and everyone should be entitled to that. And it's a benefit for the employee to get a performance evaluation as well as a benefit to the district. And so, but here's the thing. See, it's all connected. But here's with the merit increase is I'm just going to skip to that section really quick because it's really just the most substantial section. I agree with you, Jay. I don't think we should do performance-based increase. And I don't think this is necessarily 100% a performance-based increase necessarily. The goal of this is to keep people on and to give them growth in their positions and feel like they can advance and, give them an incentive to continue doing well in the role. I said this at the finance committee. This 5% increase is a binary. It's like you either get it or you don't. It's not like, Jay, you did well, I'm going to give you 4.2, and Marcos, you got 3.6, and Catherine, you got 2.8. That's a lot of favoritism and subjectivity and discrimination will happen if we do that. So it's an employee performing well. If they're performing well and they're doing good and we want to keep them, the 5% increase is that kind of incentive. Like you're doing a good job, thank you, stay on. You're recognizing now you're 1 year experience in this position that you didn't have before. And then if they're not doing well, we'd have to do something like an improvement plan and here's how you can get better. But it wouldn't come with a salary increase, a merit increase, because and maybe if they do their improvement plan and then at the end of that and they're doing really good now, okay, great, let's reward that at that time. So yeah, it's a little different because I didn't want to get into that deal of how to determine how do you link someone's performance to the amount of money they get. There's no real way to do that. It would become very arbitrary. So 5% is seen as like, that's a good step up from where you're at. It's a substantial amount, but not like a huge amount that becomes financially unsustainable. And then it's, the goal is that, 3 merit increases, that's 3 years of someone staying on. If we keep someone for 3 years, that's great. I think for the district, we don't want to have someone maybe stay on less than that. That will become hard to like train and rehire. But then after that, they would get the performance bonus, as it's still pretty much like the raise. It's just not committing the district's ongoing funds to it. It's one-time funds. And that's a huge difference for us. Like if we really had to give someone a bonus because we want to keep that employee, pooling $5,000 out of our undesignated fund balance and giving them a performance bonus is way cheaper than them leaving and then us having to, start anew. But we also, like, just the way our budget works, we cannot always keep adding 5% to our ongoing costs, to every employee. And so that, while also maybe doing a COLA, which we'll talk about after this. So that's the main structure, is that every year people will get a performance evaluation. If they're doing a good job, they'll get their merit increase. If they're not doing a good job, either they'll be terminated or they'll be given an improvement plan depending on the, scope of how bad they're doing. Hopefully we catch these problems. Like the goal is that we're not going to wait until the annual evaluation too for any correction of major issues. And then, they'll get the performance bonus after they've maxed out. So that's the general structure. The other part of it is the cost of living increase. And so what they're recommending here is that every March, the district, the board will, and maybe finance committee first, will look at the CPI March to March number, and then we'll determine how much to use. Like it says we'll review the CPI. Then for potential adjustment on July 1st. So if the CPI is like 10%, but our budget has not grown by 10%, we maybe cannot afford that. Maybe then 7% becomes reasonable, or, if inflation's at 5%, but our budget only grew 3%, maybe we say we can only afford 3% this year, or we can match it. It really becomes a financial calculation for our finance committee every year. But that's like the protection to the district, is not an automatic thing at all. It's the board reserves the right to adjust or not adjust it based on these factors. But the what would make it easier to budget, though, is this year we did our inflation adjustment February 1st, which is like mid-year, and you can never like really plan for that in your budget. So we did it March to March as the number that's used, and then effective July 1st, so that we can easily budget for it. And so there won't be one this July 1st. The next inflation calculation will be, or we're calling it economic adjustment, will be in a year from now. So that's pretty much like the main strokes of this. There is a lot of text on here and we can get into like the details, but I think I'd really like to hear more on your guys' is this the structure we like for this? And if there are like minor things, we can edit those too. But if we don't point in editing the minor, if we don't like the whole thing, how it's all working. So what's your all's reaction to this?
So I want to bring up something that I didn't see here, but I haven't reviewed the full document. But what about reclass? So as we have a new emerging need for the district, if we have an employee whose work kind of is moving into this new area and they, they're doing some of the work alongside board discussion to be actually we need to change compost collective and instead be focusing on a new type of regenerative soil work or something like that. And so do we need to have language in here for a reclass in which this person becomes a slightly different role?
Yeah, there is language for that. Promotions are mentioned here as one way that people can be, their salary might have to change. And then in the, in the performance review, it says employees who would be considered for promotion, transfer, job changes, salary adjustments, and to appraise areas where other training is necessary. So it's kind of captured in there of any changes that need to happen to their duties or job or anything could happen annually or sooner.
Got you. Yeah, because I don't feel like it needs to necessarily be like something that we invite employees to like discuss every year, but maybe, as their work or as their evaluation happens, these like what we're talking about having like regular conversations about performance, then those new needs can be shared and it allows like all three parties to work together.
Yeah.
Um, and then to just like add into that, because I've seen this a little bit in some of the work that you share with us during the retreat, but about like kind of like a billable hours format. I think you've shared something like that before at a retreat, or maybe if we saw it through finance, but where like the dollars go to. And so like even not necessarily the dollars, but the hours of where different employees' work goes to. We just started doing this like with my job at the library, and it's just in my department. And there's a lot of folks that are kind of afraid of it, but for me, it's become a whole new professional skill set. And I think that although it can be a little bit uncomfortable to think that like, oh no, I have to show my work and that kind of a thing, I think it's really useful for all the different job levels.
Yeah. Yeah, our employees, every 2 weeks, we calculate how many hours they're going to be working and on what that breakdown is for every 2 weeks. So they say, I'm going to work on this grant project 8 hours, and I'm going to work on this, new website page for 3. So we calculate that every 2 weeks with people, so it's easy for us to do it annually too.
I got you. Yeah, ours is like a 4 quarters of the year kind of a thing, but not the academic quarter, a different one. But okay, perfect.
But we can do it we can do it anyway. I mean, it's like we have the data for the whole year, so we can split it up however we want. And we can also what I did for the retreat was ask them to just give me their average of what they would say their hours go to, but we hadn't had yet a way to calculate them and sum them easily, so we do now.
Yeah, we've been using a very intense process, but the two documents are an inventory, which is like the hours and the numbers breakdown of tasks. We only do as small as like 15 minutes, and then and we try and average it out over a 3-month period, and then we do a QR, which is where we map like actions onto like listed job duties. So like I'm the only one who's not a academic appointment, so mine's a little bit different, but they're all statements of duties and responsibilities and all that. It's on the employee to interpret that language and like do a lot of that work, and that in turn leads to like less needing of management in certain ways. But
yeah, makes sense.
I just have a clarifying question.
Yes.
And so for the 3 merit increases, just to clarify, so if you're an employee and you're performing like exactly how we want them to within so they will be getting those merit increases, and then after that 3rd one, they'll be at, if we choose to do ranges, they would be at the top of that salary range. Like, is it pretty much guaranteed if you really are needing everything that you will be getting those 3 merit increases in a row?
It's guaranteed up to the amount that we can afford.
Okay.
But if you're doing a good job, if you're positive and you're it kind of says employee who's being satisfactory, then the next one is someone who's experienced and doing even better, and this is like even better. So it's like you are supposed to be advancing and doing better every year. That is the expectation, that the more experience you get, the next time you're reviewed, it's more rigorous, and it's more rigorous after that. So if someone's doing the same they've been doing their first year, in year 3, that's not maybe something we want to reward. So it's not automatic. It's not like you get the 5% once you've been here a year. It's, have you been doing a good job, and can we afford it? And we want to retain you. It's a retention tool. So and recognition. It's recognizing good work. But and here's the thing, it does give an out too. If someone's like so amazing and they're so good and we want to do more than 5%, we would take it to the board for approval and to give recognition. But that's not going to probably happen every time, but there could be someone who's just like absolutely outstanding, and we want to recognize that even more. maybe they brought in a bunch of money.
I guess part of where I'm still kind of stuck on all of this is like when I think about like a large company that, it's like a lot of the Google, right? My mental model of things that have complicated performance plans. Their modus operandi is they're constantly hiring, and they are attempting to pull a lot of performance out of the army of people that they have, and who performs and who doesn't matters from the perspective of that individual, but from the goal of their organization is to kind of treat people as cogs, and to just try to have as many cogs operating at maximum performance as possible. When you're in a small organization and you have one person in charge of something, it's almost like devastating if they're not doing well, right? And if they're doing really well, you end up in this problem where it's like, we actually only needed you to do this well. If you're doing that well, I mean, maybe you should be working at a better organization almost. And so like I just run into this problem where I'm like I'm trying to think through what these incentives actually mean. And I'm just thinking like, if we think that getting this job done is worth a certain amount of money, it's like, why are we not paying them that much initially? We're waiting for them to warm into the job. We want to incentivize them to stay for the second year. Maybe we'd be able to incentivize better people on year one if we just threw all the money we're willing to pay on the job on people as soon as they come in. And from that standpoint, if we've got somebody who's just completely there's a rock star, we want to really maintain them. I run into this problem that it's like, well, we determined how much we were willing to pay to get that done, and if it costs more than that to keep you, then I guess we need to find somebody who does the job worse. That might be just okay. But
that is something that might have to happen to all organizations one day. But it's not saying someone has to also have to be hired at the beginning. Being hired at the beginning is if you're just good, but you don't have a ton of experience. Someone could get hired at the top, but then their understanding is you're not going to get any raises for the rest of the time you're here, because this is the top of how much we pay for this job, and you get a bonus if you are doing well. I mean, if we went to just one salary for each position, we could do that. We just have to figure, and then we can do a bonus as a performance recognition. You could just get rid of the merit increases and just say each position is, 70,000, and every year you get 7% of 70,000 as a bonus. But people do like to get a monetary recognition every year. So there is like that, keeping people happy and keeping them, giving them something to a reward that's not ongoing. Like, oh, my ongoing paycheck is awesome, like I get to live on that. But you give them the little boost, it's a recognition of their good work. That's the theory behind this. I mean, you could do that different ways, but that's the theory behind this, is to keep people recognized and recognizing their new experience. Because experience is great, but experience actually doing this job at this organization is also different than, I was a PIO for Goleta. That's awesome, but Isla Vista is a little different than Goleta. You do need to learn things here.
Yeah. For what it's worth, and I'm curious. I've had jobs where I've been attempting to get raises, but oftentimes it's because I felt like I started the job and I was being underpaid, and I was just resenting the process until I succeeded in getting. But I don't know if I might have very, very unique experiences, and I admit that. So I'm curious what other people. I'd love to hear more commentary on this from Marcos, Catherine.
Jay, I think that you're bringing up a really interesting point, and I'm wondering, my particular professional experience is in academia, and so I'm surrounded by library professionals, and you need an accredited degree in order to be hired at this specific role. But then within that, there's 3 tiers, and within each tier, there's 5 to 10 pay scales that are set at the UC level, and that's based on an MOU between the Librarians Union and then the University of California. But then even within that, there's different steps between rural campus and urban campus. And then that's where it becomes a very huge hurt point for people. That's where it feels very personal or not fair based on experience or skill set. And there's other metrics that don't come in, but like come up in conversation all the time, which has to do with like the size or the number of people that we serve, et cetera. It's interesting because very few of these degrees or very few of these jobs point out a specific professional degree. And so that's like a certain thing that makes me think that I don't know. I think that what you're proposing is a very novel idea, and I just don't have that much experience of observing it. I, of course, am trying to at the moment, I'm trying to reclassify my job description with a new title and a whole new set of duties. But I'm also trying to do 3 or 4 different strategies on that, including starting a master's program and other things. And so I don't know, there's something warm and fuzzy that has nothing to do with the numbers about an employee being motivated and wanting to serve Isla Vista in the IVCSD the same way I have a warm, fuzzy feeling about wanting to serve UCSB and be a good employee that grows there and the kind of evolutionary track. But that has nothing to do with dollars or anything like that, and so we could lose out on genius employees who don't care about the warm fuzzy and they just care about the skills, the success, and the dollars.
So to verify, the conclusion of that is you are pro the policy as stated?
Yes, but that's only because of my lack of experience. I'm trying to imagine how what you're saying would play out. I have no experience observing coworkers or employees or the idea of someone new being hired in at the top of their scale and other folks who are already doing a similar job, how they might react or feel about that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Marcos. And I'll say too, I've never had a normal job experience either. I mean, I've been in this job for 5 years, but this is not even, in anything like this kind of role. And before that, different jobs were not, I was not in an organization for long enough to seek merit increases and COLAs. So I also don't have personal experience with how this would work as a person, thinking about, my 1-year review and wanting to get a merit increase for that. My situation's been different too. So
Catherine?
Yeah, and I'm even less than both of you guys. So I don't know how much weight, I guess, my opinion would have, or even what exactly is even backing it. But I do see the benefit of bringing people all on initially on same or similar salaries, and then having those merit increases as incentive and motivation to work hard, but also as recognition and thank you for the work that you've been doing. And so I do, as of right now, I do like what is proposed in this policy. And I think the performance bonuses, that structure makes sense to me as well. And how that would be a annual one-time thing, or annual, it wouldn't necessarily increase your annual salary, but be added on to
the
that.
first two merit increases would, correct?
The 3 would.
The 3.
So you start off we'll just do 100,000 easy math. 5% to 100, then 5% to 105, then 5% to that, and then performance bonus on that last number. And that's how this was set up. Oops, where is this? Reload. Okay, sorry, this is not loading, but that's how that other table was set up. It was the initial salary, and then each one was just a times 1.05.
And was the initial one 64 for
program manager?
Okay.
And that matches the lowest for a peer. That IVRPD is even $5,000 higher than that, at 69,000 for their equivalent positions. So, but we put 64. I mean, it's not a final number either. Our finance committee is gonna work on this more. These are just the first numbers to see what sticks. But yeah, this is how that's how the range has been determined. So it's not an arbitrary range, 80,000 should be the top of the range. The top of the range is just 3-5% increases.
Okay. So Got it. It would be that third merit increase would be the
Yeah,
top.
that's how that's set up. Yeah.
The specific structure that we have here, was this something that was proposed by the consultants, or was this proposed by staff here? Was this proposed, or was this like a copy of some?
I made this spreadsheet myself yesterday to incorporate and help visualize the policy that the
I meant where the policy came from, not where this.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, I had them watch the both board meetings where we discussed all this. And so I said, start from there and also give us your expert opinion on what is good and works in other places.
So this came from the consultants.
It all came from the consultants. Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't come up. I mean, I gave them again our thoughts and what we have brought up, but I said, come up with what you think is good and present it to us.
So
Okay. Well, if we've got Marco, sorry.
I was just going to ask, like, where do you see the example that you're pointing to? Because I'm like, I don't want to say that I'm against your idea, because my only experience is coming from like, well, that's the way we've done it, and I hate to like stay in that kind of logic alone. So if you could like describe like where you see, like what fields or what areas you see that type of structure of just being hired at the top comes in.
I don't have an example of that. I have what I really have got is just the brutal counter examples of watching how, like, at large tech organizations, and like my understanding of why they put in place all of the performance review policies that they have. It's also some of the things you hate most about companies like Twitter and Google. I can provide specific anecdotes for, but I understand it's also similar to Facebook and Apple. Some of the things you hate most in the outside are actually things that are caused by the way that they get raises. One of the funny ones is that the ridiculously large number of chat applications that Google keeps launching and then disbanding and then launching new ones that are totally incompatible, that's actually because of how their raise system works internally. There's no incentive actually to make products better. There's only incentive to launch new products because of the way that they get reviewed. And then I'm constantly trying to think through what it means for small organizations to be dealing with this and be attracting good talent and the complexity thereof. The notes that Jonathan kind of mentioned in passing about if you have like policies that allow for minute, granular changes where it's not just like this can be this binary thing, you start getting to ridiculously complex discrimination and favoritism problems. That's why I think about all this stuff. But from the perspective, what I was about to say before you asked that question was, it sounds like both of you are into this policy. I have stated previously and maintained that if the consultants think that this is a good idea, this is not my area of speciality, and this is actually something that I happen to know that I am bad at. And so I am excited to support something that two other directors on this committee and the consultants have put forward, and that Jonathan thought was reasonable enough to send to us. And so maybe we just take a vote on this and move on.
Yeah, well, I'll just share one quick example in like the smaller scale. So for like at least like 4 years, I supervised 10 or so student employees at UCSB. And so we had merit increases, and we had like a review and a whole matrix that they were aware of. But we didn't have them fill out their own review materials. It was just, they had one meeting that didn't have the raise potential, and then another one, they had 2 a year. And the second one is where they were potentially up for the raise. And it usually wasn't much. It was a modest percentage of what they were already earning. But our motivation, like in my small area, to use merit raises and things like that was based on retention. And so we're worried that like with a campus job, it's kind of lax, et cetera. It's part-time. We can't give them full-time employment. If we allow them to show through good work, through merit, a raise, then we're more likely to hire and be a little bit more selective and hire more long-term employees. And that was my main ambition, was to have better service with longer-term employees. Because it wasn't my dollar and we weren't turning a profit as a library. We were paying them out of a big general fund. And I'm worried about like, what I see again in academia is that like, regardless of the merit raise or not, sometimes you have someone for 2 or 3 years, they get some good experiences and then they jump ship. And I would hate to like have an employee that we like the work that they do, and then they jump ship and all we can offer them is a one-time bonus. I like that at least we have the 3-year strategy of percentage increase, and like they decide if they actually like this job for the meaningfulness of the work or the people that they serve. That's a fact. It's a little bit more of a factor than just the wage. And so that's why I am supported the merit style.
Yeah. I
Yes,
like how you said that, Marcos. Sorry, Jay, go ahead.
I guess the thought process I would bring up is that if you were to, at each point that employee is making a decision, is the experience that I have something that I could take to somewhere else and get paid more for? And so I can appreciate this thought process, and if that maybe they come in and they don't have as good of ability to jump ship and go somewhere else, and so maybe that's where this is coming from. But I guess what's feeling a little bit weird to me then is that if you actually hire somebody good, because you're hoping that they're going to work there for 20 years, and you're just like, we're going to underpay you for the first 2 years, and then they're having to like look at that job and think about the idea that it's like, okay, well, either the first year was what I was willing to do this for, or the third year was, but I'm going to be underpaid for 2 years, and I'm trying to like, it just feels like a weird calculus to me. But I can appreciate if you've got somebody who's like really new, green in that sense, and they are coming in and they are going to ramp up really their entire career with that job. It's still, I feel like it's every 5 years, you're going to lose them anyway. My hope is that we've got people that we're hiring that we can have for the long haul. So that's where it starts to feel weird to me, having all of this apparatus around it. But
I have a lot of responses to that, and I think it's really hard. I mean, we don't know where we're going to be because we haven't even existed that long ourselves to know how long we can keep people on for, especially in Isla Vista, which is a totally different market than almost anyone else has to deal with. And, we don't have employees who live where our district is, except for me. I'm the only person who lives in Isla Vista of all our employees. So I think we are in a weird spot, and we are in Santa Barbara County where it's, it is hard to keep anyone long-term. And most people end up having to leave Santa Barbara County if they want to, get more jobs. So I feel like we have to dealing with our reality. And I think the merit increases do a decent job of giving someone a reason to stay at the CSD and keep building their experience here to get paid, raise up their annual salary. And again, I do think that experience in the position is different than experience. Like it also, two of our employees, like Carly and Maya, they were green out of college when they got hired with us. And like now that they actually have been put to the test on things, like, yeah, they're doing an awesome job. Like they're doing things that weren't even considered in the interview or anything. Like, can you do this? Like, can you help write contracts for us? Like, yeah, they're doing that now. It's pretty, they have given a template, but one thing you said before, Jay, at the first board meeting about this is like people become more productive and effective too. And they might end up, it's fine. Like if someone can do all the work they're supposed to do and they work a little less than 40 hours, but they're at that top of their range and they love what they're doing and they don't have to work super, super hard. I mean, I'm not saying like no one should work super, super hard, but like they're able to output everything we want them to output. That might be good for someone. Someone might like that. Like they're like, I can get everything done that needs to be done. I'm getting paid for my experience, and I'm getting a recognition still with the bonus. But it is hard. I mean, we don't even know what 5 years out looks like. But I think what we're trying to do is at least give employees like a predictability and like a way to plan. Like if I work here, I could make up to this, and like I can plan my personal budget for the next 3 years potentially, and I can know where I'm going to be financially 3 years from now. That's pretty important to somebody to know, like where I'm going to be financially. Like if I'm going to make 94 versus 108, and you can plan your life a little more, and you can have that expectation, like I can do a really good job and earn this much by then. Or someone can start at 108 because they are like absolutely fantastic, but then they get the bonus, and that'd be their recognition. Like, you were so good, we needed to have you. So, Yeah, but I think we're just in a very hard market, no matter what. And we are a boutique organization. We're like 5 people, and you lose one, you lose the whole. You can lose a whole thing by losing one person. Like, it could be really damaging. So, I guess there's always should be flexibility too. If we're, we can't lose the ship because we lost somebody who's like critical to keeping it going. But yeah, we are different than everyone else. Like 5 employees. I mean, even IVRPD is way bigger than that. So, and I don't know if we're going to grow that much more for now until things maybe change more in the future. So,
Well, as stated before, I mean, we have 2 directors on board with this, and I mean, I'm just like looking and analyzing and questioning. I'm not trying, and so I'm happy supporting this. If somebody would like, actually, do we even have to make a motion on this, Jonathan? Or we just
motion? I can take this to the board then, and it's all good, Jay. I know I'm used to you. Even you remember I texted you like, should we just eliminate salary ranges? Maybe we should get rid of these things. So it's all good. But yeah, so I will keep looking at like the details of this because I also just got this today. So, I need to look at fine tuning. Like, is this sentence making sense for us? Like, this will become our policy. So I'll do that work of, and if you guys notice anything, like the more minor changes, now that we have agreed on the model, let me know. Like if something like does not make sense based on what we've already know we want it to do. I've already found like 2 or 3 sentences that don't make sense. So we'll make those adjustments. So, and we'll get the board's reaction on Tuesday, but it seems from this meeting in the finance committee, lots of positive reactions so far. Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So are we agreeing on so what we're agreeing to is like people wouldn't be brought in like under the second like merit raise already, like everyone would be coming in at the same like level of income?
No, so what it's saying is, it says here, newly hired people without previous experience should be compensated at the lowest amount. But that leaves the open the option, or if someone is super experienced, be hired at a higher option.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, if someone has no experience, but they have good skills maybe, or they have, it's an entry-level position anyways, we would hire them at the beginning. But
okay, just making sure there's like that flexibility. That sounds good.
Yeah. And then, one thing to note, I explained this to the finance committee. I just want to make sure I explain it to you guys too. The way the COLA will work, or the way it's proposed to work. Am I sharing my screen still? No. The way okay, here we go. The way this should work is over here. So if you look, let's just look at this one, the community engagement role. So 94,000, 98, 103, 108. So let's say whoever is in this job, I'm in this role. I'm on the second. I've made the 1 year, so I make the 98,000 now. When the board does the COLA, whatever the COLA amount we decide that year, the COLA is applied like individually to these amounts. So 94,000 times 1.03 to get whatever we choose as the COLA, and then that'll waterfall down up the range. But then it doesn't make it so that we then need to decide on giving that individual employee their COLA, because what that person makes is the second step. So the second step has changed because the board has changed the second step. So their salary will now change because the board changed the step, and the employee makes the step. They don't make the salary, which sounds so weird to say, but they're not making 98,000. They're making the, raise one essentially here. And raise one has now changed. Now raise one is now, 101,000 or whatever 3% is, trying to do it in my head. So, so it would be more, I don't want to say automatic because it's not automatic technically, but it would be, there's one less level of administration, like one less step. The board would make the decision to give a COLA, and then that would be applied to people's salaries. Their next paycheck, or the July 1st paycheck, will automatically incorporate it once the vote has been taken and the budget's set. That's different still for the GM. It's not going to be different for this year, which is one thing they're recommending, is like that myself and Maya get applied the COLA from February 1st, but then you should not deal with the GM the same way as the rest of the employees from now on. So yeah, just that's how they, it's not really spelled out in this policy too well, but it's what it means. And maybe I do need to ask them to spell it out a little more.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that the board would only be like in a regular year, things are like we don't have anything major to discuss. The only big discussion is what the percentage of the COLA the board decides is.
Pretty much.
And then that applies after that July 1st paycheck.
Yeah, and we shouldn't need to do a market study for like this for a long time. Few years, unless we radically restructure and have new positions and descriptions. I don't see that happening in the next 2 or 3 years. But yeah, we don't have to do this annually. This market adjustment people will get this year based on whatever decision we make is probably won't happen in anyone else's like rest of their time in employment kind of thing. It's like these should be good numbers that we've set, and they will hopefully keep up with COLA, and then they 94,000 should be worth the same comparatively to other agencies, as they presumably did a COLA too. So we should stay in the market is the theory here. I mean, it's not necessarily 100% true. I can't guarantee anything, but yeah, the idea is that then the COLA is the only thing we need to decide on. And then the raises are a budget thing, but it's more of like, in the finance committee, we look at our budget. Do we have enough for 5% extra on the employees? Maybe we say we don't, so we have to make the merit increase 3% that year because we could only afford 3. But that's something we decide also annually, how much money we have for those things. So again, I know that was like something we really brought up. Like we don't want to get financially hamstringed into these financial decisions that then, the expenditures outpace the revenue, and then we're kind of in a bad spot where we have to lay off for something. So this making it all discretionary just says, hey, so in order for everyone to keep their job this year, because the revenue is so down, we're not giving the COLA. But that's the trade, is like no one's getting laid off, which has happened in a lot of other government agencies.
And then for what it's worth, I mentioned this to Jonathan. After that meeting, I went and I talked to somebody I know works in the financing loan industry, and their comment was, if you actually look at the chart carefully, CPI doesn't go down. So it's kind of an academic question anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. All right. Well, that's the pay. It's been a long saga to get here, over a year technically at this point. So we can move on to the credit cards and the naming, or we can at the very least bump the naming to another meeting. I know it's been an hour already. Where are you guys at?
Even when I'm tired, I kind of have infinite stamina for policy, so I'm happy to keep going. But I don't know if other people want to.
I'm ready to keep talking. I have plenty of time.
I am too.
Right on.
All right, moving on to item 3.2, review credit card policies. The committee will review the credit card policies prepared by management partners and give direction to staff. Jonathan?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to necessarily say about this one. These are just giving us a policies and a guide for how to be transparent with our use of our credit card and how to avoid fraud and embezzlement. That's the goal here. So really, what it's really saying, like to summarize it, is the general manager has been delegated authority to run the card system, which is what the resolution we passed pretty much said. And it just creates all these different rules and responsibilities that employees need to use when they're holding the card. The card has to be in one place, never using it for personal purchases, the general manager has to approve each purchase a employee is is excuse me. The general manager has to approve the purchases before the employee goes to use the card. That's a big one. And we have a process set up for that.
And I do see now, and I keep looking at this on phone, and so I wasn't noticing. Yeah, you got little comments on the right. It's what the yellow is for.
Yeah, but not all the yellow has comments.
Oh,
Like this one doesn't, so I don't know. Maybe it's like their internal editing. The person working on it, Pete, he was just using the yellow to edit. So sorry, I keep clicking on these things and it moves me. Oops. Sorry. All right. So authorized uses, these are pretty standard authorized uses, things we need to buy. It's more like incidental, like things that we're not going to use a credit card for are like our contracts. Like to pay our contract with UCPD, for example, we're not going to charge that to the card. We're going to pay that with a purchase order and with a check or bank transfer. That's not what the card is for. The card is for like these things that we need to buy in the moment, things that are they can be planned for, but you can't just do a purchase order to the Albertsons sometimes, things like that. On-site services prohibition. So this is like a prohibition that is in the card, but this is like, we cannot again use it to pay for our professional services. And like when someone comes to our building to make changes, like to work on the building, we did add in something like it can be waived if the insurance coverage is unnecessary. Like if someone's just changing the lock on the door, okay, that's fine. But it's pretty much the point is that we want to protect ourselves. Like if major work is being done for us, then we will pay them through an invoice and require them to have insurance. It's not like the card is not for services, I guess. Maybe minor services, like come fix our lock on our door, but it's not for these bigger things.
Do you know? Like, I mean, to me, it would feel like the requirement to have insurance comes from the contract or service, the agreement that you have for the service being rendered in exchange for the compensation. How the compensation actually is handled, whether it's by cash, check, money order, whether you bring in a large pile of Chuck E. Cheese coins to pay them, like it feels like that would be separate from whether the insurance is in the contract. But
this is part of the card, like the purchase cards regulation. Okay. So some of this is like us just putting the larger regulations from CalCard into our own guide. So this is a restriction from CalCard.
Fair enough, because the next one was actually even more interesting to me, because it was like, provided that district staff disassembles and reassembles such equipment prior to and following repair.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't get it fully either. And I was asking, like, I mean, when I got this from the consultant, I was like, I don't understand these sections either. But he said these are, because technically it's not a credit card, it's a purchase card. So it has like these slightly different rules.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Who knew? Prohibited stuff. Pretty straightforward. No alcohol on the card. Cash advance, split purchases, like just keeping things. We don't want fraud. That's the goal here. Is we don't want fraud. We don't want embezzlement. Mistaken personal use. It's gonna
actually first under prohibited purchases. The food unrelated to official travel or instances where prior approval is required. I know they're doing there because it's kind of like the inverse of one of the previous sections, but I find that wording extremely difficult to understand if you didn't read the entire, like try to, because it's what they're saying, right, is it's if you get food and it's neither related to official travel or it is one of those instances where prior approval was required, which was like a category above, then you can't do it. But I feel it may be more easier to say like food unrelated to official travel or without prior approval as indicated in one point, the earlier section or something.
That makes sense. Makes sense. I put a note here. I'll fix it. Yeah. So mistaken personal use. This is a pretty standard, they came up with something to help us deal with that system. Great. Thank you. Monthly statement review and approval. We've already approved usually all the transactions. If they're too big or if they're minor under the GM spending limit, we approve it. If I make the transaction, then we do need somebody to review what I'm doing. So it's been the board chair because we don't have a finance manager for us. So we've been doing board chair. So, but again, that's still for things that are, well, sorry.
It feels weird to me that we're trusting you to decide whether one of the employees of the district has done a correct transaction, but we don't trust you to decide yours, because it's not like we're approving the ones that you approved for other people.
Yeah. Well, you never know. Someone can get corrupt and they could just do little things and it adds up to their personal benefit. Like I could start buying things on Amazon for the district, but then throw in one little thing that looks reasonably maybe for the district, and then you just keep it and you keep doing that. The county had a huge embezzlement issue recently, and that's why they created all these layers of just someone else checks and balance.
So to verify that, so then is the argument there that in the case where you're approving something from another employee, the employees in some sense the check and balance on your check and balance?
Well, I'm the check and balance on them because I'm verifying that what they're buying is legitimate. Not.
I guess I tend to think of these things in terms of how many people have to collude in order to
do embezzlement.
Yeah, because it's not necessarily always an action of one person. So
yeah,
I guess it does.
It could be too. Yeah, I could tell the employee like, "Hey, buy this and let me have it," or something. I'll buy something for yourself. You could get to that point, but at least they won't be doing it on their own. I guess. Yeah, and then we do get audited. That's another level where they will then inspect every transaction every year and ask us sometimes on spot checking it what is what. So, but by having the card, we are opened up to more issues because it's so good to have a card. I'm not going to say let's not have it, but when you're buying things like on Fin and you're using like the county system to reimburse people, or even if you're getting reimbursed yourself, there's so much scrutiny of the transaction. Like if let's say I bought something on my personal credit card and I want to get reimbursed by the district, I have to fill out a form. I have to, write the description of what it's for, which line item it came from. I have to sign it. Then we have someone else sign it, a finance manager, a board chair. And then it goes to the county and they review it. Then they have someone else review it. I never get reimbursed because it takes months sometimes. But that's because they're worried about this kind of thing happening, even though it's not their money. So with the credit card, it becomes even more flexible. You can just take the card and go to the food co-op and use it. Yeah. So it's just to have some checks and balance. No receipt available. This is going to happen sadly sometimes, and we have to, but yeah, we just have to write an explanation and, someone has to approve it. And that's the check is, Marcus just says, hey, we had a board retreat. We had to have wood stocks for it. Here's the card, it was on video. You can see us all eating wood stocks. You approve it. This is just a copy paste, if we need to dispute a charge, lost cards, straightforward stuff. And then pre-approval form. So we have this is a Google Doc. It's just a Google spreadsheet. Employees fill out what they're gonna buy. I just write in approve, and we would use Google's, track edits or not track edits history. Someone can't just write approval for me because I'll look back and like, oh wow, so-and-so wrote approval in my section. Great, they broke the rules. So that would be our, way to protect, did I write the approval or did someone else write it? So that's it. Credit card policies. A lot of it's boilerplate.
Any comments or questions, Marcos, Catherine?
No, I think it looks pretty straightforward. Actually the only comment that I had was, Jay, what you had mentioned earlier. I had to reread that part a few times, but other than that, I think it looks pretty straightforward.
Cool. Yeah, I'll fix that section for sure.
Okay, maybe we move on to item 3.3. I guess I should be explicitly asking, is there any public comment on items 3.2 or for that matter, items 3.1?
There's no members of the public in this meeting, so.
Moving on to item 3.3, review naming policies. The committee will review the naming policies prepared by management partners and give directions to staff. Jonathan.
Okay, so I will say, like, I'm not brushed up on this one because it's from January and it's been sitting and there's something to do. But just to give you some context, I asked all my questions about this in January. So if you have questions that I can answer, maybe my memories are rusty on them. But we started getting this policy written in reaction to Father John passing away and wanting to do something at the district to like name either, a memorial of some kind, like a plaque on the building, or we didn't know what exactly we wanted to do yet, but we wanted to have like a fair policy. What the heck? We wanted to have a fair policy of how we go about it. And I think we wanted to be more than just facilities. It looks like they picked facilities only, but it's very easy for us just say memorial, any other kind of object. So sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. I thought I was. Here we go. So yeah, so this is a policy just to be able to give us a fair process to make for this. The Santa Barbara County and IVRPD and Goleta all had pretty good policies. So Goleta just had the best one in terms of like, it was the newest and most well written out, but they all kind of did the same thing. So, but we said, let's just use them as a template to write off of it. So like there's sections and all that. So yeah, here's the policy. I mean, this part is just definitions and authorities. So mostly boilerplate stuff. It kind of just says like the goals of this is we want to have a guide to do this and give us the ability to recognize people. I guess it says facilities. I think it's just maybe titled wrong. It is for all things. So commemorative objects, markers, dedications, anything, a bench, award, all that kind of stuff. So here's kind of the process that it lays out. Public involvement being in there. The board having the final authority to make it. Yeah, I don't know what much to say on this. I mean, it just lays out a process. So do you guys have, and there's a lot, there's a lot on here. So I was wondering if you guys had any like specific questions or anything that you already have thought of in looking at this, because it's like a 13-page document. Yeah, Catherine.
I have a question, or I guess was curious on parks being included in this.
They just made the mistake and I haven't gotten their edit for that.
Okay. And so will that all just be taken out, or?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to like ask them for the Word doc of this to make. I also never got like a Word doc. This has been like a past project that kind of sat on the shelf a little bit and we just needed to reopen up right now. So yeah, we will make these edits and we'll need to get the because I told them we don't have parks. We're basing it on like IVRPD was a comparison point. So
yeah,
it's confusing. Yeah, why sometimes things like that just need to be fixed. But I'll fix it up. It's more of like, but this is a very expansive policy though, and there's a lot to it. And yeah, so there's
Jonathan?
Yes.
It sounded like you broke up in the middle of a sentence, so you might have just stopped. I
I
was
just
checking.
Yes.
So in section 5 procedure, A2, although really it's the entire section there. So any person may initiate the naming of a district-owned facility by submitting to the district general manager a request for such action and setting forth the proposed name, description of the facility, and a statement evidencing that the proposed name is consistent with the district's policies. And then the district manager will review the request and supporting documentation. And if the district determines the name conforms with the district policy, which as above is like that it's the person you're naming it after or the thing you're naming it after satisfies some relatively simple criteria, like it's an endemic culture or wildlife feature, or if it's the name of a person who may have done some outstanding service, then the general manager will forward the request and supporting documentation to the board for consideration at their next regularly scheduled meeting. And it just feels like this is like ripe for denial of service attacks on people just submitting a bunch of documentation to just try to name everything we have constantly. And at every meeting, we just receive lots of requests of people attempting to name things after things.
Yeah, I guess
maybe that's okay. Maybe that's our job. That's our job to satisfy, the public wants to try to name something, but it is like anybody. It's not even a person who lives here. So
yeah, we could, I guess we could make it any resident instead. I don't think we will get to that point. It is more of like creating an opportunity but I think it would be up to me to say like, oh, this person submitted 20 requests. This is not reasonable. Like, let's
but is the number of requests in violation of the policy? Because it simply says here that you will determine if it is conforms with this policy, and if so, you will forward it. So
yeah.
Is there
often that language and make it more discretionary?
Is there any language in here about, say, like community support for said name? So like with the section that Jay is bringing up about like one person proposing, like I feel just like in a general, like I haven't read this document super deeply, that usually these things would have some community support naturally. Like there might be like 10 or so folks who are like, yeah, that's a great idea, and like them willing to sign on a document. I don't want to like limit or make a unnecessary like burden for people, but I feel like that kind of shows outside of the district and maybe like someone who might be viewed as a district favorite or something, that actually the community supports this naming convention.
That's a great idea.
I like this idea. So you're saying something maybe like when you run for office where you're trying to get like I need 20 signatures from residents on this document in order to submit it and get it considered.
Great idea.
Yes, exactly.
Great. Yeah, we can add that in for sure.
I like how much of this is having to do with the physical maintenance and placement of actual plaques or statements. On UCSB campus at the College of Creative Studies building, there's this giant concrete, like it almost feels like maybe like a helipad location from back when it was a military base in front of the building. And there was an art student back about 20 years ago who went in the middle of the night and just dug a giant pit in front of it, filled it with concrete, and then chiseled out on top, put all the topsoil and all the grass back. And it now says that it is this is the name of the art student, the Robert Wexler Memorial Plaque. And it has the dates that he was a student chiseled into the thing. It's just, he just went there in the middle of the night and commemorated the, not memorial plaque, the memorial slab. He just commemorated it to himself. And so there's a lot of policy here about, we would not be responsible for maintaining the random commemoration that was done by somebody in the middle of the night. And
good.
The fact that I've seen somebody do that,
yeah,
I think it's still there, because it'd be really difficult to remove the Robert Wexler Memorial Plaque on the slab. So
it's hilarious. Yeah, no, we hopefully, yeah, we will not be responsible for this thing. This one is kind of, I guess it means something to us, is like, memorials that people erect if someone has passed away somewhere in town. Giving that 30-day, even if it is, not supposed to be there, quote unquote, or blocking, just giving them that 30 days to let them have that out there. So as long as obviously.
For what it's worth, I generally like the criteria that were applied for determining whether somebody or counted, or whether a name that was based on geographic locations and various things. It seemed reasonable to me. So.
Yeah. All right. Well,
sounded though like there's more work to be done on this, or not? Like you said that this is something that's been kind of a side project since January.
Yeah, because they sent me this draft, and then I haven't been able to work on it since January. But since we were having the committee meeting today, might as well get your guys' reactions to it, and then keep working on it instead of bringing it, keep waiting to bring it back. So
is this something that would come back to another meeting of policy committee if we have? I know it sounded like Marcos at least had a chance to dig deeply into this one yet.
It's up to you guys. If you guys want to look at this more, we can. If you feel like it's pretty much done and some minor changes can get it straight to the board, up to you right now.
I'd be in support of moving forward with it.
Okay. Yeah, I can just touch it up and take it to the board soon.
Any comments on it? Great. I was just asking Catherine's comments on it, so there you go.
Yeah, just the parks and then this change. I really liked Marcus's idea of the 20 signatures or however much. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it'll make it like a thing. Yeah, civic engagement. People have to go to their neighbors, get them involved.
Yeah. All right. Is there any public comment on this agenda item, John?
No.
Okay. Is there nothing further we have to do on this? We just give direction to staff. Okay. So moving on to agenda item 4, future meeting dates and future agenda items. The next regular meeting of the policy committee will take place at a later date set by the committee, because we currently don't have a regular meeting date. Is that legal? Maybe we have a policy on that.
Yeah, well, we do need to set a regular meeting time, but we just don't have one yet, but we can get and set at the next special meeting we create. So
okay, well, there you go. That's the agenda item that I guess I will request on the future thing is even if we can't cancel all the time, I think we are required to have a regular meeting, even if it's
yeah, we know we should. I forgot to put it on this agenda is all. So we'll do it at the next one.
All right, moving on. Actually, is there any public comment on agenda item 4?
No.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 5, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
1 second.
All right, moving on to a roll call vote. Director Aguilar?
Yes.
Director Flaherty?
Yes.
Director Freeman, I also vote yes. Motion passes 3-0-0-0 at 17:25 p.m. I call this meeting adjourned.
Right on. Thank you, guys. We'll see you.
Thank you.